everyone? Welcome to another episode of the StepZen stream. We have a really exciting episode for you today. We have my good friend Alex Trost. Alex, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm really thrilled to be here, Anthony. Always good to talk with you. I get to work with you now, so this is I don't know. I'm super excited. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I've been telling you about StepZen for a while. Last week, after I had Ben Holmes on at the end, he was like, so this is how you get your friends to try out StepZen, huh?" I'm like, pretty much.
Could have just invited me over for dinner or something, man. It seems like it might be easier, but now we get to chat with everyone here, so I think it's a win-win. I think it
Yeah,
works
right at
out.
the end of the meal, I'm like, so about this GraphQL query. But I'm especially excited because we're gonna get some good graph-themed horse puns, I would imagine. So,
We're gonna
gotta
try.
keep it on brand. So why don't you let our listeners know like who you are, what you do, where you work, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a developer experience engineer over at Prismic. Prismic is a headless CMS that really focuses on component-driven data. So basically, the focus with Prismic is that you build your site with slices, and slices are essentially like big components that you can move and reuse, and your editors can build out pages with these like big sections of your website. So that's really what we focus the CMS experience around. And yeah, so I work there trying to make the developer experience a bit better. On the side, or I guess in addition to, I also run a thing called Front End Horse, and it started out as a newsletter and a blog, and now it's kind of grown into a community, and a stream is kind of the thing that I'm focusing on for the most part there. So yeah, I stream. I have great guests on. I think we've got you scheduled for December. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, I think December
Awesome.
21st, somewhere around there. So we'll be hyping that up. We might actually kind of end up building a little bit on top of what we build
Oh,
today
cool.
because it'll be fairly bare bones what we're gonna do today. But I think when I
Awesome.
get on yours, I'll probably throw in like a Redwood app or something ridiculous
Oh,
just
I'm
because.
excited. I'm excited. Great. Yeah, so we focus on creative coding and front end development, and horse puns. There, we encourage very strongly a pun culture, and chat, and the community is a whole lot of fun. If you're looking for a friendly place to just talk about creative coding and front end development, yeah, hop on over, or
Yeah,
or
I
or,
can.
or trot on over. Yeah, I got to work on it. Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
get
I
the
can.
coconuts.
I can attest to the just sheer wonderfulness of the community over there. I always have a really good time, and I've gotten to meet a lot of people who have lots and lots of skill sets that I certainly don't have. And what I really enjoy is the heavy design and CSS emphasis that you have.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious, like when you use the term creative coding, like what exactly
Mm.
does that mean?
Yeah, it's definitely a big blanket term that covers a whole lot of things, and like I think I kind of need to narrow down of like creative front end coding, because there's tons of coding like with shaders and lots of things that might not necessarily make its way to the front end, but will eventually, or not eventually, like, but it's still creative coding. So people code in all different kinds of languages, but really the focus of the newsletter and of the stream is like, can we add some creativity, add something kind of artistic or new or just fun to the web, to the front end. And so that's really what I focus on. I bring on guests like George Francis, our friend, who's very active in the community. He does a lot of generative art that's like SVG and JavaScript based, and we learn from them, and we kind of figure out how to do stuff like cool stuff in 3JS and all that good stuff. Hey Lucia, looking at the homepage seems cool. Prisma creates a continuum between developers and content creators. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. It's exactly that sort of thing where we want to empower the content creators uh to not have to go tag a developer every time they want to launch a new page, right? They can use the pieces that the developer has built, and because the developer builds it out in a good framework like Next.js or Nux or Gatsby or whatever the developer chose as the best tool for the job, they get to build these new pages. The editors get to build those new pages in a solid framework, but still get that page builder experience that like something like a Wix would give. But a Wix front end isn't going to run the same way as a nice, refined Nuxt or Next app. So kind of a win-win for
definitely.
everybody.
Yeah, that's my coworker Lucia, and
Lucia,
what
sorry.
you're yeah,
Thank
that's
you
all good.
for
Yeah, what you're describing is, if anyone saw a stream we did a while ago, Storyblock, they also have they're a headless CMS. They have
yeah.
a content editor. They have their own weird specific words to describe things, like they have blocks instead of slices. But I do enjoy this kind of model that I see a lot of headless CMSs converging on, which is giving the best of both worlds, in the sense of you want to have that decoupled aspect of it, so you can build your front end the way you want, the typical like Jamstack kind of way. Like, really big into the Jamstack here at StepZen, and so
Yeah, same.
we like these kind of tools that give the developer the ability to hit it with an endpoint, like a REST API or a GraphQL API. Prismic offers both, which I think is similar with Storyblock, and so that's really cool because you want to be able to give the developers that flexibility, but then you want the content editors to be able to edit the content as well. And what I find really cool is that you can also get people who are kind of like newer devs involved also, because they can start editing the content and then also start playing with the API. And then they can start to like map how those two things actually go together. Oh, we got some spam. You must be a popular fellow. You got spammed. Yeah, I don't know if I actually have them.
Follow me wherever I go. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm logged into my Anthony account on Twitch, so I can't delete that right now. But not the end of the world. At least he's not trying to sell his crypto. But yeah, but the last thing on that creative coding stuff is that I love that, because like I used to be in kind of the arts field, and so
Nice.
I definitely enjoy just creating stuff in general. Is like what got me kind of into coding, is because I like the process of creating things, that like honing a piece of work, and whether that's something visual or something auditory, because I was a musician. But it's really the same kind of idea of how do you make something that other people enjoy, but then also how do you find a process that allows the creator to really express themselves and how they want. And like people talk about like code as art kind of thing. I never really bought into that, but using code to make art, like that makes a lot of sense to me, because like you can generate almost anything you can think of, especially when you get into like the generative art stuff you were saying, which is that you can start creating these algorithms that can like mix and match different color combinations that you could never even think of. And you can just like spit out a bunch of stuff and be like, all right, well, 99% of this looks weird, but this thing looks kind of cool. Let me take that piece, and then kind of go off of that from there.
Yeah, but then even using stuff like, I don't know, like the Fibonacci, like the golden ratio, and using color theory to pick your colors, and like like you can use math and things like that to make some super cool things. And I'm always blown away, like the Voronoi tessellations and stuff like that George and others get into. Like, wow, this is
As a
really wild
$10
math.
word.
Yeah, and it just looks super cool. I've been learning a bunch. Basically, I don't know much. I bring people on to teach us about how they make these incredible things with just CSS or just with code, right? It's just it's been a lot of fun. I get to meet a lot of great people, and I'm sure you can relate.
Totally. Yeah, that's a good thing to do. Our episode has not aired yet, but there's an upcoming FS Jam episode with your name on it. So keep your eyes on that.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna do some screen sharing now, and let's get into. Oh, here's the front end horse. Also, nice little stirrup. I think.
Yep.
I love that you literally just picked front end. You picked horse because there's a .horse domain,
and it's really funny to me. Just the name .horse, like to look someone in the face and say, yeah, you just type in front end .horse, and they're like .com. No. I mean, I own that, sure, but that's not it.
All right, so here is our Prismic homepage, and you actually have a GraphQL query prominently displayed right here, which I think is pretty cool. And we're going to be looking more with the REST API. So I'll be curious if you could talk a little bit about like why exactly you think someone would use one versus the other. I have like my own reasons that are kind of StepZen specific, but if you were like, someone's asking you, how should I access API through Prismic, how would you tell them to think about whether to use the REST or the GraphQL one?
Yeah. So the way that you access, so like the experience that I have for the most part accessing the API comes down to using the client, to be honest. Like when I'm actually building out projects, I'm typically going in and hitting it not so much through just like a raw request to the GraphQL API or to the REST API, but more so like picking the framework that I'm using, or if it's just JavaScript, or if I'm using something like SvelteKit that doesn't yet have a plugin or an integration. I'm pretty much reaching for the Prismic client just as a personal thing, and
So that
then
would be
with
one of these, right? Like
yeah,
this would be
yeah,
like
yeah,
the React Prismic client.
yeah,
And so it
yeah.
gives
So
you
that's
specific instructions for like how would you do this, like with use effect and stuff like that, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so the React one, we're actually we just released a brand new React kit in beta. That's going to
Ooh,
be a little bit different than this, but for the most part, that just handles the rendering of the content.
this is gonna
But
work, but
no,
is
we
this
don't.
where it
I
is?
don't. Do we have that?
Uh,
I don't.
maybe.
That's probably like a developer product thing. Um, no, so for React, for the most part, querying is going to be pretty similar across most of your JavaScript applications. The big difference, or actually the big, yeah, the ones that are more different than others, I should say. Let's try to get that sentence out. Are Nuxt and Gatsby. Gatsby definitely handles things in a very different way than Next does. Where with Next, you're kind of making your standard query in like a get server side props kind of thing. Where with Gatsby, we actually have a plugin that brings your content in and exposes it all within Gatsby's their GraphQL layer inside like the mesh there, right? Like
That's awesome. That because that's going to be pretty similar to what we'll be doing.
I
Is
thought
what
so.
StepZen is for anyone who doesn't know, because this is the StepZen stream, so you may or may
Yeah.
not know. We have an ability to basically feed in lots of different data sources into one unified graph. So this is really useful for your front end, because let's say that I have this Prismic site and I have like, blog posts as well, but I also have e-commerce
Yep.
thing with like Shopify, and I bet you probably have Shopify integrations as well. So this is one of those things where there's going to be many, many ways to do this,
Yeah.
but with StepZen, it's just a generic way to feed literally any endpoint you could possibly think of into one unified graph. So if you wanted to have your blog, and you wanted to have your e-commerce, and you wanted to have like your own bespoke Redwood application with a database for your users, and you want to be
Right.
able to bring that all together in a coherent way. That's the idea with StepZen. So we're going to show how to connect to Prismic's REST API to feed some data into there. And then when I get on your stream, we'll build that out further into like an actual kind of full project. But right now I want to just show like, how do you
Yeah.
hit the API? How do you get data back? Because you have some interesting kind of conventions around like refs and things like that. So took me a little bit of time to figure out the GraphQL one, especially. So we're not really going to go into that one at all. But you said that you were kind of more familiar with the REST API anyway.
Definitely.
So first,
Yeah, the
let's
GraphQL API, just full disclosure, doesn't work 100% the way that a typical GraphQL API would work.
because you got to do gets.
Yeah. So there's just a few differences where it doesn't feel like a full GraphQL API. I think we're working on getting a bit more a bit further along with that implementation in the coming months. Um, for the most part, if you want to get like nested linked data, you use something called GraphQuery, which is our own like not I don't say proprietary, but it's kind of our own personal thing. Um, but connect StepZen and let us do the rest. Nice, nice. Um, yeah. So to get linked data, you're going to want to use something called GraphQuery in order to say like, give me this document and the author, and the author's photo, and like to get those kinds of relationships
Okay, yeah, this is
without
interesting.
having
Yeah,
to
this makes a
make.
lot more sense.
Yeah. What was I gonna say beyond that? Oh, just about StepZen. What you just
Hmm.
described, I've been saying for a while. I want that. I want Gatsby's data layer as a service. Basically, it's one of my favorite things
Where your
about
guys?
Gatsby. Right.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things about Gatsby. Just having all that data, being able to see it in that way, being able to check off the things I want, not having to worry about like um just the fetches within my components and all that stuff. Like I love that aspect of Gatsby, but Gatsby has its trade-offs and its shortcomings, and sometimes I want to pick up next, but then I'm like, ah, man, passing data around here just isn't as nice. So I've always wanted the data mesh, that data layer of Gatsby as a service. So I'm super excited to see StepZen up close.
Yeah, we got StepZen Next Starter. We got a
Awesome.
StepZen WordPress Next. We got a bunch of stuff with Next already. So
That's
that's the
great.
one of the things I also really like is that once you get your front end connected to a StepZen thing, then like that's just handled. And then whatever you want to bring into your StepZen graph, you can kind of do. So that's kind of what I do is I like go out and find things like Prismic and figure out how to just connect to the actual endpoint itself and feed the data in. And then it's like, okay, you can take literally any of our starters, just drop this Prismic schema in, and then you're good to go.
Awesome.
So we'll start by, let's do this totally from scratch. Let's create a new repository and we will call this Zen Horse.
Very calm, meditative.
Yeah.
Horse.
And so
Love it.
why do they ask you whether you're a developer, content editor, or project manager?
So just on my end, the reason I know this is just so that we can kind of understand who's signing up.
Mm-hmm.
In the near future, we're looking to customize your experience off the bat for easier onboarding for certain types of people, right? Like if you're
Mm-hmm.
coming in as like a content editor, that would be easier. But for the most part, like it helps us understand, oh, there's a lot of demand for Next.js. We want to make sure that we put a bit more emphasis on that in the documentation or something, right? Like just having having an understanding of our users, not so much like trying to be invasive, but it's just because
Mm-hmm.
we don't know where the data is going and we kind of don't want to know, right? Like we're
Right.
an
Yeah.
API, but when it comes to like creating our kits and things like that, we want to make sure that we're not ignoring a group of people. So for instance, Svelte it keeps on coming up in terms of like, hey, other, and it's Svelte, like we want to use Prismic. And so we are like hearing the community and we're focusing on building out that integration to make it super easy to use Svelte and Prismic. We're working on that right now.
Nice. Yeah. I'm a big fan of Svelte, so I'm all
It's
into that.
awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So one thing that is interesting here is that you don't just like kind of start by creating content. You first describe the type of content you're actually going to create in the first place. And so, hey, we got some Svelte fans in the chat. Nice.
Hey, Brent's here. If you wouldn't mind, good to
Yeah.
see you.
Yeah. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah.
And what is it says right here, actually, I really like this. This is a great onboarding experience. It just
Cool.
tells you straight up, but you have the repeatable types, which are things like blog posts, authors, products, and then single type, which would be like a homepage or a privacy policy page. So basically, is it something that's going to be like an array of things, or is it going to be like one big thing that's going to be like a page? And so we want to create like a blog post here. So we want a one of these. And so
you can't even make a repeatable type page, and we do that with Slice Machine, our new like our new development tool and experience. But like that singleton one is more about like, is it just like a menu where you want that everywhere? You're only going to make one of them. Where for page, because of slices, you're able to create like endless pages and just give them a UID and run with it from there. Brent says, definitely look forward to learning about these two services together. Yeah, great to have you. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, hyping up StepZen every time I'm hanging out in my discourse. Is like, I do actually legitimately like really like the product, so it makes me feel less like a shill, because I'm like, hey, trust me, like this is actually cool.
I used Prismic before they reached out about the position. It was kind of my go-to for a headless CMS.
Mhm.
I used others. I like others. But it's not like I was like, oh, I never heard of this, but sure,
Mhm.
I'll talk about it. I'm like, oh, this is great. I've used this on a bunch of sites already.
So I'm curious, what is the difference between like the field name and the API ID?
Yeah, so the field name's more just about what is going to be shown to your editors, where the API ID isn't going to be shown when I'm entering content. So that's just more for you and I as we're wiring up things in the back end. But yeah, so if you give the field name like a capital,
Mhm.
like if you make that pretty, right? So if you do like rich text,
Mhm.
capitalize it and space it, we're going to add that underscore. You can change that
Ah.
underscore out, but like that's just the difference, is that we're going to automatically change it to more of, I don't think the hyphen's going to work
So
for.
that's what I was just gonna say. That I when I was testing this yesterday, I'd had the hyphen here and everything broke, and so I was gonna say, don't do this.
Yeah, it's yeah,
But
we're
I did
the
yeah,
editor
you
is a
can.
big spot that we are devoting a whole lot of time. We're fielding a big team for it to just make our editor really,
And I
really
should I
great.
should specify that Prismic did not break. StepZen broke.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, gotcha. Well,
Yes,
that's good.
yeah.
Oh, no
Because
one,
when you tried to
no.
feed it in, because we'll see as we get to the StepZen part, but this is basically where you're gonna tell it what's how the data is coming out and how do you actually match it to your GraphQL schema.
Got it.
So
Got it.
I'm just gonna leave this as like
I
that.
think now that you edited the API ID, we're not going to automatically change it. I hope that's okay.
Let me
Yeah,
just start that over.
yeah. Just like we save you the time, but then once you start to change it, it's gonna let
Keep
you
this
do whatever you need.
all lowercase, one word. I think this is gonna be the least
Yeah.
likely to break anything. So
The
yes,
placeholder is not necessary, but it's a nice way to help your editors just be like, hey, I don't know,
cool.
whatever people you use a placeholder for.
Yeah, and then we're just gonna save that, and then we've
Cool.
got our type, and so now we want to actually create a thing. So this would be in the documents now,
Yeah.
and we see exactly what we had before. So we have our title, we have our rich text. We have to say this is the title, and this is the rich text. And let's just start with that for now. And so you can save it, but what we really want to do is we want to publish it. So
Right.
once we publish it, then now it's actually going to be live and out there on the internet. And what's really cool is you have this pretty sweet API browser thing. So is this something that you use personally when you're kind of messing around with the API?
Yeah, occasionally, especially if I'm trying to like debug something, make sure that something is like actually in the API. Like, so if see like, all right, is this my code or is this something happening on Prismic? It's usually my code. I mean, that's just good. I'm not just saying that because it's Prismic, but because every service that thousands of people use, it's probably my code. Like, it's rare
Mhm.
that I find a new bug. But yeah, it's really helpful to kind of see how the content's coming out, and you can add some specific queries there. See how the
Yeah, what
JSON
I
comes
liked is that
back.
you can switch between the HTML and the JSON. It's a really nice touch because you can kind of see it like this is what it actually look like with the markup and everything. But then if you want to see, okay, what's my data actually look like though? And then the really nice touch and what makes this clutch for StepZen is the result itself comes with the endpoint that returns the result, which is
Oh,
not
that's
something that a
important.
lot of APIs think about actually.
Okay. I never knew why that was important, so I'm excited to learn. So okay, so it's just a reference to itself.
So it's basically now this is just like the raw JSON, because before, when we're looking at this, if we just grab this wouldn't
Got it.
necessarily work, because this is
Right. No.
optimized for this whole GUI kind of front end thing. So
But even in that result you just got in your last tab, even that has the same length. It's just interesting that it links to itself.
yeah, it's basically this recursive thing, because it's just an ID
Got
pointing
it.
back to itself. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I don't know enough about like creating APIs and this kind of stuff to understand why that's important. It's just one of those things that I don't honestly pay enough attention to when I'm making a site, right? Like that's never a thing I need for my I just want my content typically, right? So that's cool, though.
Yeah, and so this is going to be basically the endpoint we're going to use to get our StepZen thing going.
Cool.
So I'm going to hop over to what I always do for these streams is I basically like build the thing out kind of ahead of time just so it actually works, and I don't embarrass my guests, and then I kind of just like walk through again and kind of explain.
I'm here to do that all on my own, Anthony. That's what I'm here for.
That's your job.
Yep.
Okay, so for every StepZen project, you have an index.graphql, which is what links the rest of your schemas together. And so this is just a simple example. We only have the one Prismic file here, not much else going on. And I want to first start us off with just a part of this that we're doing here. So I'm going to put this in and then delete a bunch of it. Okay. We don't want to do that yet, and we don't want to do either of these yet. So what's happening right now is we are creating a GraphQL type that's going to essentially match up with this response that we're getting up here. So we are able to use what's called our REST connector to feed in a REST endpoint and then specify exactly what we want to get. And this is cool. So you had asked me about like the nested JSON and how exactly that kind of works, because if we look at this, what we're getting back here, we have a decent amount of info here, but really this results thing is what we actually want. And then within the results itself, the actual data we want is in this data title object and then this data rich text object. So that's actually where the important stuff is happening. So with our REST connector with StepZen, we have this result route that lets us say, okay, we don't want this whole object. We actually just want the results. And then that's going to give us access to everything inside the results. So I want to just pull out this type right here and display blog post. So we're creating a result type that has the type, which is string. So if you've ever seen a GraphQL schema before, everything aside from this is a basic GraphQL schema, exactly how you see any GraphQL schema written. And then the directive is where it gets a little interesting. And now that we have that set up, let me go back to, where was that? GitHub. I always do this thing where I end up with too many tabs and then I start moving windows around.
I've never had too many tabs, Anthony. I don't relate to this at all. I didn't even know you could make tabs in Chrome. That's a thing. I always have one tab.
I just have the single tab all the time.
I thought the Chrome had a single thread. Isn't that what they mean? Single threaded? Learn something.
Okay. Also, I don't know. Have you upgraded yet to Mac OS 12?
No, Windows is kind of my daily driver. I thought you were going to ask if I upgraded.
And this is why
Windows 11
stuff breaks on your streams.
Yep. Yeah, Windows 11 I can't get access to because I built my own PC. Eventually I will, but yeah, no, I haven't gone to fired. Yeah.
Hey, I've seen some things.
Yeah, it's tough when people build for one platform and don't have access to the second. Like if you like, there's so much stuff that looks funky on Windows because like the scroll bars show up when you don't expect it, and they don't on Mac, and it's just weird quirks of not just the browser but of the actual platform. But yeah.
All right, cool. So this is going here. So if we check out, we've defined a single query, and the query just returns a single thing. So Right now we're running a query for the results, and then we're asking for the type, and then we get back here the blog post type. So this lets us know a couple things. It lets us know that we've correctly connected to our endpoint. And the way we did that is we have this zenhorse.cdn.prismic.io whole API thing. And then we got the rest of this here. So this is why I like having that ref in there, because like I could have figured out how to get this endpoint somehow, I'm sure, but it would have taken a little bit more actually like reading of the docs. Whereas with the visual API thing, you just like find the thing, because the ref thing is where you have to kind of like figure this out.
So the ref thing might bite us. Here, so the ref isn't just okay. The ref ties in specifically to this release, kind of like a Git hash. So if we publish something again, that ref is going to change.
Okay, that is good to know then, because right now this is just like the bare bones proof of concept of how to link these up. But I imagine there will be kind of some things like that we'll have to think about. So that'll be for the next stream, doing that kind of stuff. But right now I just kind of wanted to show the base case of how to do this. But right now we're not getting anything useful, because we're not actually getting the blog post. So we have to figure out how to do that. And so this is where we have these setters. And when I was messaging with you yesterday, this took me a little while to figure out, but this is not something you could have helped me with, because this is entirely a StepZenism. So this is pretty cool though, because what this lets us do is it lets us reach into this deeply nested object and grab out what we want. So we want, within this object, we have the results, and then we have the data. And so we want to grab the title and the rich text. So what we do is we specify the path. And so the path is going to be the data.title. And so if we didn't have this results route, it would be results.data.title. So we can nest these at kind of multiple layers. So we're going to be able to run a single query that's going to return the type and also these, but then the object itself we're getting back isn't going to be nested the way this is. So it gives you a lot of flexibility in which parts of the data you want to pull out. And this is stuff that you can do this yourself with any GraphQL server. You can write your own resolvers, like figure this whole thing out. Like, this isn't magic, but it's just like saves you a ton of time and gives you really, really nice conventions to just say, this is the exact data I want, and then create your own schema and then get that all going. So once we've specified the paths, we then specify the fields. And so the fields are going to be title and text, and they're both returning JSON objects. So any questions about kind of what's going on here?
No. Are we able to type it more specifically than JSON? Because I'm just curious if like what we're going to get back from the rich text beyond JSON, or can we type any further?
So this will just give us back the JSON objects as they're currently written. But if we wanted to, we could write more specific setters to say we just want to pull out like the text of the title. So that is something that you can do as well. Cool. But right now, if we just look at this,
I know we're going for simple. I'm just interested in StepZen in general, because
no, this is great. These are really fantastic questions, and so that is definitely a thing that is possible. And so now, if we want to,
that was going to be another question: is do we have the Explorer? Because honestly, just checking boxes in Gatsby is like my favorite way to get my data, not having to go and So
the Explorer is great. And like you saw, I just wrote this query just by clicking buttons. So it's like, you can skip right past even needing to know how to write a GraphQL query. Like, I give this to my mom and be like, open the Explorer, click the things on the left, hit the play button. And like my mom would be able to run a GraphQL query. And like, to me, that's like the pinnacle of usability.
Yeah.
Cool. And so now we're seeing here that we've got this is our rich text, and then this is our title. So this is your StepZen Prismic 101. This is like kind of the most basic way. You can just create a thing, go and find that thing through the REST API, look at what your object is going to give you back, and then you can write your schema and then create it. So how complicated you want to get with this will just be like, what does your front end really need, and what do you want to pull out, and how complicated is your own data model? and then you can kind of write your schema here. So this is one of those things where it requires a little bit of knowledge of just like StepZen and how the REST connector works. But this is
GraphQL.
And GraphQL, yeah. But this is why, like, us as StepZen employees, we're creating these integrations kind of for you. So this will be like the start of what's going to be like a whole schema that would be for any kind of stuff you want to create. So if you have kind of ideas of like what you think would be like an interesting thing to like build out a GraphQL schema for, then I would be kind of very curious to know that, because this is going to be a sample project that's going to kind of grow as we build it out kind of over the next like month or two.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. So now that we kind of have that all figured out, I did want to just kind of show the Prismic GraphQL API a little bit, because even though you say that it's not exactly kind of what people would expect, I do think it's just a nice thing to kind of play around with, because the great thing about GraphQL like this is that you have these kind of pre-made endpoints for you. So we'll change that to Zenhorse, I think. Okay, so this is...
So the ref thing, like that, yeah, the Prismic ref, a string representing the required content version. Yeah, so basically that's the way that we make sure that your data is always up to date, and also handle things like previews. So
gotcha.
like, yeah, so the way our previews work is that we give you just a different ref, and essentially JavaScript kind of rehydrates the page, pulls in that new data, and shows it to you. Shows you that new version that isn't
this is what I wanted. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that doesn't match up with the master ref is essentially how that goes. But yeah, this will get you there.
Yeah, this will get you there. So for this, I had a query for this also. I think I had it in the bottom of this. I was like, to do one of these. And so let's see, it's going to be... Actually, I remember how I did this. And then you guys have some nice autocomplete here. So I just hit Control Space, and then I can see all blog posts, and then do Control Space again. And then in edges, you have node. This is a GraphQL-ism.
Yeah.
And then you can actually get the title or the rich text. And then this gives us back what we would expect from any other kind of GraphQL interface. But we notice how this is not like the same data object that we were getting back from StepZen, because we have the edges of the node thing. So when we were kind of talking about this, I'm like, this is kind of a ridiculous example, because you already have a GraphQL API, but it is a little bit different ergonomically how you end up working with it, because you are going to, with StepZen, kind of define a little more specifically what your query is going to look like. So if you look here, like this is like a really simple query just to get results and the exact things you want. Whereas with the way you have your thing set up right now, requires a little more knowledge of the graph itself and looking through the docs to kind of figure out like what is the actual query you want to write. So yeah, if you ever want to chat about GraphQL stuff, put your people in touch with our people.
Yeah, that'd be. Yes, let's make it happen. I'm all for it. Yeah, I think like my gut's telling me that if you're just pulling in Prismic data, we, like clearly Prismic has the tools and the capability to get you up and running, and you're going to build your website no problem. It seems that StepZen's really going to come in handy as you start to add more things in, and those things you wouldn't think at first, but they start to multiply pretty quickly. Like, oh, we want to add analytics so that we can see and surface the most popular blog posts, so that if like as blog posts get more views, we're going to query plausible data and pull that analytics in, and we're going to like merge that in with the actual blog posts, and right, like as you start to add things in there, oh, we're also going to pull some data from Supabase. Like it seems
Mhm.
like StepZen's going to be a nice way to kind of combine all those things into the content mesh. I'm not sure if you have a better term for it or a different term.
So we haven't really like created a term to describe this. I think most people have decided to use the term mesh. So people compare us heavily to Take Shape. Take Shape calls themselves an API mesh as well. And
Okay.
I think that the older, more technically correct term I think we would call StepZen is that it's a gateway, because
Hmm.
it's a thing that basically sits in front of all of your other backends, and it makes the calls to the backend and then relays it to the front end. So it's actually a very traditional piece of API technology in that sense. And this comes
Got it.
from StepZen being a like company built by like old school API developers who used to work at
Cool.
Apogee. Apogee was eventually purchased by Google Cloud, and it's like one of their
Yeah.
main like API kind of hubs. So when I would describe this to people, I say that it's a managed GraphQL gateway, and
Got it. Yeah, and
managed GraphQL
GraphQL.
API gateway. Yeah.
Cool. And GraphQL, like I'm not super well versed in this world, so I'm speaking
Mhm.
from ignorance completely. But like GraphQL sits in front of REST APIs pretty easily, right? Like it's a very common thing to kind of have GraphQL sit in front of several REST APIs or even another GraphQL API and kind of handle all those requests. And is that kind of right? Like is my
It's
mental model there correct?
Yes, it's definitely a thing. It's a thing that's possible, and it's a thing that people have been doing forever. What StepZen does, though, is to let you do it with way less code.
Right.
Because if you see how you would do this traditionally, you have to basically write what are called resolvers, which is the resolver
Mm.
saying, when I run this query, this is what it's actually going to do with this specific data source. So that's where you would have to get all the different REST endpoints and then feed that into your graph and then write
Cool.
all this code to make that happen. Whereas StepZen gives you the at rest directive, which just lets you put the endpoint in and then say, I just want this part of the data, and then do the setters, and then that'll give you all of that. So that's kind of why this isn't necessarily something, it's not necessarily new capability that StepZen is giving you so much as it's giving you more velocity, and it's giving you a simpler mental model to work with so that you can hook into REST endpoints really quickly. And then we also have all these pre-built integrations already. So you wouldn't even have to write like a
Nice.
Shopify integration because
That's
we
the part
already
I
wrote
love.
that for you. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, let's definitely chat about how we can make that happen with Prismic a bit further than this.
Yeah, and the
But
super
yeah,
base thing you mentioned is spot on. That's what we did last week with Ben. We did a Slinkity project where we hooked StepZen into StepZen API and then did a GraphQL request from Slinkity. So we got like a full stack
awesome.
Slinkity project up in like 30 minutes by doing this. So it's really cool stuff. And like once you kind of get it and can work with it, like the stuff you can build is like so cool, and you do it so fast. This is why like for me being into really like full stack Jamstack stuff, like this is the perfect tool for me because it's that midpoint. It's like right at the back of the front end, front of the back end type thing,
Yeah,
and it
that's
lets
about
you
as far as
stitch
I
all
go.
that stuff
That's about as
together.
far as I go, and that's where I want to kind of stop
There
and
be
hand it off to
dragons
someone else.
beyond there.
Yeah, exactly. Just and it's just not as fun for me. Like I said, like I like puns and horse jokes and creative coding, and that's kind of where it
Hmm.
seems like I get diminishing returns once I go too far back there. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I've been wanting a step zen thing for a while so that I can kind of use that same model that I like with Gatsby anywhere on any kind of project. So I'm excited to get more into it. Um,
Awesome. Yeah,
yeah.
that's really cool. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our viewers just about Prismic, or things they should check out, places they can kind of get some resources, get some help?
Yeah, one thing we didn't touch on today because it doesn't it's not so much like part of the API, but it's more of just a way of building websites and making website creation for developers a
Slice
lot
machine. Is
faster.
that what you're
Is
saying?
it Yeah, it's Slice Machine. We've been working on that a whole bunch, and we've got some fun things in the pipeline in terms of like Slice Machine challenges and just a whole lot of fun stuff. So if you want to check out Slice Machine, you can head to Prismic.io, pick up one of the starter kits there, or slicemachine.dev is also a site that kind of showcases a bit of what Slice Machine is.
Yeah,
But
if you Google
yeah.
Prismic Slice Machine, the first thing that comes up is getting started with Slice Machine Next.js, and that goes to a dead link. So you might want to
Oh, thank you so
let
much.
someone know about that.
Yeah, so slicemachine.dev, let's say that.
Yeah, that one's good. And then I
Awesome.
see the announcing Slice Machine blog post. I'll look at that one in there.
Cool. But today we're actually doing a Gatsby 4 and the new React kit that I was kind of talking about stream today on the Prismic.io channel, or not Prismic.io, Prismic.io Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Prismic.
I don't think I'm subscribed to that actually.
Gotcha. All good. Most people aren't, so it's fine. but I'll be over there with my colleague Angelo. Angelo is the developer of the Gatsby plugin, and he rewrote our React plugin. He's phenomenal. He's a lot of fun. I think you would enjoy him, Anthony. Just in terms of like he's just a pleasant and brilliant guy to be around. So yeah.
Great. So you said you're going live today in like
Yeah,
2 hours, right?
in 2 hours. Yeah. So if
Cool.
people
I'll
want
be
to see
there.
more of this, I'll be over there. So
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Alex. This was a ton of fun. I just so much appreciate the work you do and the vibe you put out into the dev community. So thank you so much. And yeah, excited to keep chatting more about how we can, make this a better integration and
love it.
make this useful for our users.
Awesome. Yeah, and I can't wait to have you on the Front End Horse live stream. So
Yeah.
be good. Thanks for having me.
All right. Everyone have a good day, and we'll catch you next week.
See you, B1 Mind. Take care.